Now let's look at the text tool or the type tool. Click on the type tool, and there are two ways you can use text in Photoshop. One is if you drag a rectangle with the type tool, and you can type inside the box, or you can simply click and type. So if you select the type tool, click on the canvas and type in something, this text is called point type. You can, with the point type, you can change the font over here. You can also change the orientation of the type by clicking on this button over here. You can change the font style, and this is the size of the font in the points. This is anti-aliasing of the font. And let me zoom in on this font and show you what is anti-aliasing of the font. So in anti-aliasing, if I say none, you can see the edges of the font, and if I say sharp, crisp or smooth, it becomes smooth, sharp and crisp. So I have a point text over here, and I have area text on the other hand. So if you want to color this text, all you have to do is select the color over here or from swatches, and Alt and backspace will fill the color to text. And so the difference is that the point tool, point text, is used for titles or a small piece of text or a word or some effect on the text, something like that. Whereas this text is used for the longer paragraphs. With the area type, you cannot you cannot play with the effects or jazzy fancy effects, but with the point text you certainly can do a lot, and we have couple of tutorials on text which are based on text alone for several effects and realistic still or realistic gold kind of stuff. So that is about the text. Now you can click on the text and click on this tiny icon over here, and that will give you the panel of character and paragraph. In character, you can change the font, the style, the font size, and the leading, that is the spacing between line, the spacing between character, and the spacing between the baseline, etc. So you can play around with all those things, and you see what are the possibilities you have with the text, both the text with point type and with the area type. Along with that, you can go to paragraph. You have alignment, you have indents, and all those options, regular options of the word processing. Now next tool is the shape tool, and you have rectangle, rounded rectangle, and ellipse, etc. All these shapes in shape tool options. So let me tell you that this is a vector shape, and I'll show you the difference between vector and graphics shape. So the shape, the rectangle shape, we can draw with the help of rectangle marquee tool also. So let's draw one rectangle and fill that with the red color. So I have a rectangle filled with the red color, or let's take an ellipse and let's fill it with the red color. And now go to shapes, and let's take one elliptical shape and draw a shape over here. So I have one shape, one circle as a shape, and one object as as an object which is not a shape. Now we want to see the difference between the vector object and the raster object. So this one is the raster object, pixel object, and this one is a vector object. Now let's select both of them and let's drag the size to the max possible we can. And now look at the edges of this object, which is a pixel object or which is not a vector object, and let's have a look at the vector ellipse. And that's the difference between vector and pixel. So we have the shape tool with all these options. What is most interesting is a custom shape tool, and you can click on this tiny drop down. You have plenty of ready shapes and plenty more you can download from the free sites as well as the paid sites, and you will have all sort of shapes readily which you can download and add to this list. So this is particularly useful for creating logos and some fine graphics or some geometrical graphics. Now you can go to this website www.shapesforfree.com and download plenty of beautiful shapes, and I have downloaded one such shape file from shapesforfree.com. Now you select the shape tool and select the custom shape tool and go to this tiny drop down, then this tiny drop down, and say load shapes. And my shape file is on the desktop, that is flower custom shape. Select that file, say enter, and at the end of the list you will find the shapes. Now these are the downloaded shapes. And these are for free. So there are hundreds and thousands of different shapes available for free download, and you can create your own as well. So it's very useful for the design. You have different icons, you have different logos. In fact, you have all the social media logos, and then you can color them or play with them in your own style. Now let us look at the layers palette, and to access the layer palette you can hit F7 on the keyboard, go to Windows, and you can even access layers palette from here. On the layer palette, the default image always will have a background layer, and you can click here to add one layer, and on this layer you can paint or whatever you want to do. You can paste an image, a photograph, and all sort of other things you can do on this layer, and you can control the opacity of this layer. So if let's take one photograph and say Control V to paste, and that creates by default a new layer, and that's layer 2. You can make this layer invisible temporarily, or you can move this image around. You can lock this layer and it will get locked so that accidentally you don't move this. You can lock it only for for moving, but you can do other things like painting over it or some other things. If you say lock for paint, you can move this image but you cannot paint over it. And also if you lock it for, so if you lock it for the transparent pixels, you can do whatever you want on this, but that will happen only on the image boundary. So you can even feel this if you lock it for the transparency. If you remove this lock, you can paint it, but that will not have restriction of the contour of that image. So that was about the layers. Now one more interesting thing about the layers is that you have blending modes. So let's use a color on the background in order to understand the blending modes. So with the blending modes, these are the blending modes over here, and with the blending mode you can create different effects. I'm using arrow key to shuffle through the blending modes. So this is blending mode, and the blending mode has got unlimited infinite possibilities. Now let's add a layer mask, and to add that you click on this small button over here and you add the layer mask. This is layer mask. On the layer mask, if I paint with the black color, I'm making this layer transparent, and if I paint back with the white color on it, I'm again making it opaque. That's the masking. So I can select and feel the black color in it, and I make it transparent. So it's one of the most useful thing about the layers in Photoshop is the masking. And you can hold on Alt key and click on this, and you can see what is your layer mask. So with the layer mask, you actually do not destroy your original image, but you can get it back any moment. So you are playing with the layer mask to make it transparent, or do some creative things over it. However, the original image remains intact. Along with this, you also can link two or more layers together, and this is the button for linking. So you can select one layer, control and select another. This way you can select multiple layers, or you can also select this layer, shift another layer, and you can select in between all the layers. So after selecting multiple layers, you can click on the link, and now the layers are linked. You can also add a folder over here, and which is called group in Photoshop, and you can push your layers inside the group, and that makes organizing your PSD file much easier, because sometimes we create layers more than 100 layers. So in those conditions, grouping it makes life easier. So if you look at the tutorial of matte painting, you'll see there are more than 40 layers in it, and I have used groups to organize those different layers. Now you can add the effects to this layer, and let me show you how you add the effects. Click on this effects button, and we'll add a simple effect to this, and that is drop shadow. And you'll see this in all of the video tutorials, and in much more detail we have discussed almost all these effects, and some of the tutorials are based on these effects alone. Beside this, you can also add the adjustment layers in the layer palette. Like for example, let's click on this adjustment layer button and add brightness and contrast, and change the brightness and contrast of this image. And now the difference in doing that with the adjustment layer is that my original image is still intact. If I do this to my original layer, if I go to image adjustment and brightness contrast and I change the brightness and contrast of this image, then I actually lose the original image, and it's difficult now or impossible to go back to the original state of this image unless and until I copy paste the origin from its original source. But if I use the adjustment layer, my original image remain intact, and I can add multiple adjustment layers. I can add vibrance to this. I can also control the intensity of my adjustment by changing the opacity of the adjustment layer. And again, about the adjustment layers, you will see in detail in almost every tutorial video.